Okay, I'm going to get started by welcoming you guys back. Perhaps you had some good lunch, be able to fill up the stomach and feel refreshed. Easy to find food in Thailand, right? So we're going to start our afternoon session with meditation. So if you guys would like to join, and we're going to do breathing mindfulness meditation, or I'm just going to do the chanting, and then you guys can do your own meditation because you've been meditating for a while now. You know to focus on the breath, and whenever the mind moves off the breath, just cut that off and let it go and come back to the breath. And then after the period of time of quietness, I'm just going to come out with chanting. So there's not going to be any guidance for the breathing mindfulness meditation. This will help you to transition into being able to do this on your own, where you're not always dependent on me to be able to guide you in meditation. You need to be able to stand up more and more on your own 2 feet so that you can actually meditate on your own. So if you'd like to meditate, you're more than welcome to. I'm going to chant, and then at the end of the meditation, I'll just chant again, and then we'll start our class. Our class this afternoon is going to be practicing non-attachment, how to eliminate attachment to those who are closest to us, because these are the deepest attachments and the hardest ones to eliminate. So I'm going to teach you guys how to do that. So if you'd like to join for meditation and chanting, you're more than welcome to. Arahang Sama Sambuddho Mahakawa Bhutang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakawa Arahang Sama Sambuddho Vicacaranang Samuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusana Bhutto Bhagavati. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหะกวาโอตังมหะกวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหะกวตาธัมโมดามังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหะกวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามานุสนังปุตโตภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. So this topic that we discussed this morning, true love, love without attachment, this is helping you to gain the wisdom of what true love is and helping you to understand that as long as you have attachment, you're not going to be able to get to true love because your cravings, desires, attachments, your wants and expectations are going to get in the way of your true love. That if you're trying to put expectations on people and trying to control them to do things your way, then your true love can't shine through, which is you have a genuine interest in seeing this person be well. Instead, what the mind's going to be doing is trying to control this person to do things your way. So it's when you get those cravings, desires, attachments out of the way that your true love can shine through more and more, and the people around you can experience that. Then you can experience that coming back to you, because whatever you put out, that's what's going to come back to you. So if you went around trying to put expectations on people and trying to control people and force people to do things your way, people are going to be doing that kind of stuff to you. But if you go around loving people as they are, having unconditional love, not wanting or expecting anything from them, and you can just love them as they are, understanding you're going to disagree with their choices and decisions while still loving the person. Now, as you do that more and more, that's what people are going to do with you. They're just going to love you as you are, instead of trying to constantly change you or put their expectations on you. So getting your attachments out of the way is so important for you to develop harmonious relationships. So I'm going to teach you how to eliminate your attachments. You already know the Eightfold Path. If you've been studying with me for any length of time, then you've studied the Eightfold Path with me and you've learned that, but you're going to need to commit it to your memory. You're going to need to practice that inside and out, backwards and forwards. You wouldn't be able to just use what I'm going to teach you here to eliminate your attachment to the people that are close to you. You're going to need to practice that Eightfold Path. So if you've only learned it once with me, you're going to need to learn it multiple times, maybe through the videos and podcasts, the books, maybe getting personal guidance. You're going to need to really commit that to memory so that then you can practice it. You wouldn't be able to practice it if you don't commit it to your memory. So you're going to need to know what each one of those factors are and how to actually practice it in your day-to-day life. And as you're doing that, that's going to guide you to eliminate all cravings, desires, attachments. But then there's certain things that you're going to need to do for very specific types of cravings, desires, attachments. And that's what I'm going to teach you now, is how to actually eliminate attachment to people and beings that you're close with. So just like always, if you guys would like to ask questions, we have the microphones here. And then for those of you guys online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So the first thing is that in order for you to eliminate attachment to the people closest to you, you're going to need to acquire wisdom. You're going to need to understand what attachments are. You're going to need to understand how to observe them in your mind when you're having them. You're going to need to understand the Eightfold Path and how to practice that. You're going to need to develop your practice of the Eightfold Path. So you're going to need to acquire wisdom. And remember, acquiring wisdom is to learn, examine, and investigate something, to reflect on it, to independently verify it, and then practice it. That's where you got wisdom. In terms of practicing wisdom and having wisdom, it's not just intellectual. Getting to wisdom is not just intellectual. There's a certain intellectual part of it, but then you need to reflect to verify whether the teachings are true or false, but then you need to practice the teachings. If you weren't practicing the teachings, there's still ignorance in your mind. There's still the unknowing of true reality. So for example, when we were growing up as children, we probably all learned that it's unwise to use drugs and alcohol. That's something that we learn intellectually, but we might have actually done it. We might have actually used drugs and alcohol. And that's because of our ignorance, our unknowing of true reality. So intellectually, we understood something was unwise, but we still did it because of our ignorance, or our unknowing of true reality. So in order to be able to get to wisdom, you're going to need to practice. You're going to need to make decisions through that intellectual understanding. And then it shows that you're actually practicing the wisdom. So continuing to acquire wisdom and developing your practice, this is what's going to help you to eliminate your attachments to those people who are closest to you. And the Eightfold Path is the primary thing that you're working on developing wisdom of when you first get started. Next, you're going to need to know what is true love. That's why I taught that this morning. You're going to need to understand the wisdom of that through first intellectually understanding it, through reflecting on it, and then practicing it. And what I shared this morning isn't everything you need to know about this topic of true love. Usually what I do is I teach to a certain level of detail, and then as students ask more questions, we go deeper and deeper and deeper into it. And then as you're applying it in your day-to-day life, that's where you're really going to be able to see what is true love and practicing it more and more. So it took my wife probably a good 5 years to be able to practice true love with her son. It was very hard for her because she was so attached. Her attachments kept getting in the way. So it's going to take you some time to learn it first and then to practice it in your day-to-day life and all your relationships. So you're going to need to spend more time understanding what is true love and understanding how to practice it. Understanding that missing someone is not your love, and when you have grief, that's not your love. These are discontent feelings that are coming from craving, desire, attachment. Love is not attachment. Love is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. Then, as you have relationships with people, understand that each individual being needs to have the freedom to make their own decisions. If you're trying to control the people that are around you and trying to put expectations on them and pressure or force them to do things a certain way, this is not true love. This is not love without attachment. This is you having attachment. This is your cravings, desires, attachments. Because sometimes when we see people struggling that we're close to, if we have attachment, you might feel like you need to rush in there and make a bunch of decisions for them so that you don't see them struggling and having difficulties. So you're going to need to step back and let people make their own decisions, understanding that every single person is their own individual being and they need to have the freedom to make their own decisions. If you're putting expectations on people, they're going to feel pressured and forced to do things a certain way, and it's going to damage your relationships. And now people feeling you forcing them to do things a certain way, they're going to want to get out of the relationship. They're not going to enjoy that pressure. So you can share your thoughts and ideas with people and help people understand what it is that your thoughts and ideas are. But then you need to step back and let them be able to make their own decisions. And you're only interested in doing those kinds of things when people are open to your ideas, right? You're not just interested in giving unsolicited guidance to people about what they should or shouldn't be doing in their life. This is a very common thing that you'll see when people have craving, desire, attachment, and also when they have ego, that someone's going to give unsolicited guidance, telling other people what they should or shouldn't be doing in their life. You would like to eliminate that from your interactions with people. You can ask and invite people rather than pressuring or attempting to force people into doing certain things. So asking and inviting people towards a certain objective is a way that you can help someone. But ultimately, you need to make sure that you allow space for them to make their own decisions, and then you just maintain your comfort with their decision, whatever their decision is. You're going to need to allow people to struggle. That they're going to struggle. This is part of the way that people cultivate wisdom. Again, when people are attached and you see someone struggling, you might feel like you need to step in and fix that situation for them because you're experiencing painful feelings when you see them struggling. That's because of your attachment. So by you stepping back and allowing the struggle to happen, this is actually going to help you to eliminate your attachment and for you to practice non-attachment. I'll give you guys an example of this. At one point, my son, he was having friends in the village, and he was about 7 or 8 years old at this time. And me and my wife knew that his friends that he was hanging out with wasn't going to produce beneficial results or wholesome results because these boys were into a lot of unwholesome things. And we knew that. And we went to my son and we let him know. We said, hey, we don't think you should hang out with these boys. You're going to have some problems. And he's like, no, these are my friends. These are my buddies. Like, we hang out. We do this. We ride bicycles together. We do this together. Okay, up to you, right? We just let him go. We advised him, and then he's making his own decision about who he would like to spend time with. Well, it wasn't more than a few weeks later that he came home and he didn't have his bicycle helmet with him. And I said, what happened to your bicycle helmet? He said, I don't know. It's gone. I was at my friend's house and I came out and it was gone. And I said, okay, who was at the house? And he gave me a list of all the people at the house. And I said, who was not at the house? And he said, this one person was not at the house, this one boy. I said, okay, it sounds like he probably took your helmet. And then we talked to this boy, tried to find out what happened and discussed things with him. And then eventually this boy gave the helmet back. This boy had stolen his helmet, right? So now my son got his helmet back. And then we said, do you see what we're talking about here? These friends are going to do these kinds of things because they're into unwholesome things. And he said, yeah, but I still want to hang out with them. Okay, up to you. You hang out with the friends. Well, a few weeks later after that, he came home. He was drenched and soaking wet. And we were like, hey, what happened? He was like, well, I was riding my bike. They stopped me in the middle of the village and they started dumping water on me. And this wasn't during Sangran period, right? They started dumping water on me and they hit me over the head with a bucket. And I said, oh, okay, you see what's happening, right? These are the unwholesome results that he's experiencing because of his unwise decisions. But he needed to make those decisions and see the results for himself. We needed to allow him to struggle through that situation and those multiple situations where he was hanging out with these boys. Well, eventually he decided to stop hanging out with these boys, right? And he no longer hung out with them. And he could see that his decisions were unwise. But then when he started going to school, he started learning how to make friends that are into wholesome things, where if we would have just rushed in and tried to control who he spends time with, he would have never been able to cultivate the wisdom of how to make wise friends and wholesome friends. So now when he goes to school or when he goes to play football or wherever he goes, I see that he hangs out with people who are into wholesome things. Me and my wife don't have to tell him anything about who to spend time with because he's making all these wise decisions now because he understands what it means to be around someone who's making unwise decisions. So we needed to allow that struggle to happen. Whereas if we were attached, we would have rushed in there and tried to protect him from all those unwholesome things that we knew that were going to happen to him. But by stepping back and allow the struggle to happen, it allowed him to cultivate wisdom. So just like you've been through certain struggles and you've cultivated wisdom, that's what's going to need to happen with other people in your life too, where you can offer, you can ask and invite people to understand certain things. You can offer advice, but ultimately they may not take it. And if they don't take your advice, you need to be comfortable to step away and just allow the struggle to happen. And then they're going to learn through that, because those are the decisions that they're making. You're not making the decision for them to struggle. They are making that decision. Because if you've offered your advice and you've offered your suggestions and they're choosing not to follow that guidance and advice, they're choosing for this struggle to occur. And now as that struggle occurs, they're going to cultivate wisdom that's going to help them to be able to grow and learn and develop, if that's what they choose to do. So you're going to need to allow the struggle to happen, whether it's with a life partner or a parent or a brother or a sister. I've done this with my sister many times. My sister is older than me, so it's very rare that she's ever interested in taking advice from me. So she pretty much is always struggling with the various challenges that she has, and she's got to figure these things out. Every once in a while, she'll come and ask for my help, but I just need to let that struggle happen. Even though I would prefer to step in there and help her, I know that that would be my own attachment, my own craving, and I'm not interested in doing that. So I just let it happen. And then she gets to cultivate the wisdom. And yeah, she experiences unwholesome results, but that's her choice. And then in the process, she cultivates wisdom. So you're going to need to allow this struggle to happen. Remember that you're an individual being. Sometimes when we get married, sometimes people think that we're just one person. I don't know if your culture has this, but the culture that I grew up in, they think that once you get married, you are now one person and you guys are going to agree on everything, and you should agree on everything, and all your decisions should be exactly the same. This isn't actually going to happen, because everybody is their own individual being, whether it's your life partner, your children, your parents, your siblings, boss, co-workers. Everybody's their own individual being, making their own individual decisions. So you need to be able to keep that in your mind, to understand that you're all individual beings. And as I mentioned previously, agreement doesn't equal love, and disagreement doesn't equal hate, division, and disrespect. It just means that we have different opinions. We've had different experiences, and that's okay. So sometimes when I'm teaching here, some student might say, well, I disagree with you. Well, of course you disagree, right? Because you haven't learned the same wisdom that I've learned. You haven't understood the same things that I've understood. You haven't explored the teachings in the same way. You haven't had the same experiences that I've had. So therefore, of course, you have a different opinion, right? So in your life, there's going to be people who have different opinions and views than you. That's normal. That's impermanence. But you don't need to force agreement. Disagreement is going to be a normal part of your day-to-day life. So remember, everybody is their own individual being, and they're going to have different decisions, and they're going to have different opinions and different views, and that's okay. We don't have to agree with everyone. We can still be friends and agree and disagree with each other. But oftentimes when people disagree, they do that disrespectfully perhaps, or they do that with aggression or hostility or bitterness, or they're trying to force the other person to agree, right? But if you're just simply disagreeing, there's no harm in that. Discussions are important versus forced agreements, right? When you're having an attachment with someone, you're going to try to force them to agree with you. You don't need to do that. You can just talk, have discussions, and if someone disagrees with you, they disagree with you, and that's okay. And you guys can walk away still loving each other, still holding hands, still hugging, still smiling, that you disagree with each other, and that's okay. That's just impermanence. But if you have a craving or a desire or attachment, you will want this person to agree with you, and you can only be happy if that person agrees with you. So just understand that disagreement's going to happen, and you would like to have discussions when those disagreements are happening, and see if you guys can understand each other. And at least if you walk away with an understanding of why they're making this decision, you can at least feel better about that. But understand, when you're having those discussions, your goal is not to convince them to agree with you. Your goal is to understand what it is that they're thinking. And then if they're interested in understanding what you're thinking, then you share that with them. But the goal of a discussion isn't to try to convince them to agree with you. It's just to understand their opinion and their view and why they're thinking that way. So you're not interested in forced agreements. It's really helpful to have time alone, that when you're in a relationship with someone, oftentimes you spend a lot of time with each other. You're going to need to spend time alone, especially when you go on holidays or things like this. You're going to need to spend time alone. So going to the mall by yourself, going to dinner by yourself, going to the movies by yourself, not every single time, but occasionally, this is really helpful. Even going on holiday or vacation by yourself. Or if you guys go together on holiday and you're at this other place, then splitting off and doing things separately while you're on holiday together, this is really helpful for your relationship. Because let's just say you're going to Italy for 2 weeks. You might feel like you have to be with each other the entire time through the entire holiday, where your mind is oftentimes going to get attached in that situation, and now you're going to be angry and frustrated during your holiday and your vacation. But if you guys can build in some time where you go off and do things separately, this is going to help ensure that you don't have crave and desire attachment in your relationship. So maybe in this 2-week holiday, maybe the first 2 or 3 days you're together doing things, but then maybe on the 4th, 5th, or 6th day, you go off and do things separately. This is okay, right? You guys are both adults. You'll be okay doing things on your own. And now when you come back together, you can talk about the things that you did. You have a wonderful experience. But if you just stay with each other the whole entire time, now your mind's attached and you feel like you have to, do exactly the same thing as the other person. And you feel forced to do things with the other person, where you'd like to have the freedom to go do things on your own. And this will be helping you to let go of any craving, desire, attachment in the mind. As you are separate from each other and you need to communicate, it's important to communicate with a purpose, that you have a purpose behind your communication. So let's just say your life partner goes on a business trip or a holiday. You're not interested in calling them up and being like, oh, honey, I miss you. What are you doing? I want you to do this. I want you to do this. Oh, I can't wait until you come back. Oh, I miss you so much. This is just talking about your attachment and how attached you are to the person. If you're going to talk to them, you'd like to talk with purpose and certain things that you're trying to accomplish. So getting on the phone or messaging, just telling them how much you miss them and how much you want them to be with you. Where are you? What are you doing? These kinds of things. This is not going to allow your mind to let go. You need to be able to let go and separate your mind from this individual, and you create a life outside of them. That you have your life together, but you also have your life that is separate as well. That you don't have to know every single little thing that they're doing at any given time. Then you're going to need breathing mindfulness meditation, because that's regularly training your mind to let go. That's why it's wise to be doing that every single day, 2 or 3 times a day, training your mind to let go, let go, let go. But you're also going to need to practice generosity, where you're giving and sharing without any expectation of anything in return, such as your time, energy, your effort, and your resources. You're going to need to share with the people around you. And sharing in your relationships is really helpful. So if you have a life partner, if you have children, if you have coworkers, if you have parents, if you're having attachment in these relationships, practicing generosity with them is really helpful. So, giving them fruit or candy bars, or taking them to the movies or dinner, things like this. You can practice generosity with those people. This is going to help your mind to let go. So the breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity in general is training your mind to let go. But in those relationships, you can be practicing generosity. Because as you heard me talking about earlier when I answered Poon's question, is that the Buddha describes each individual healthy relationship is going to need to have 4 things. That it's going to need to have generosity, endearing speech, beneficent conduct or moral conduct, and then equality, right? So you would like to be practicing generosity in your relationships. Then if your relationships are such that you guys are all practicing the teachings, this will be really helpful, particularly with a life partner. If you and your life partner are both practicing these teachings, it's going to make your relationship that much better. It's going to really enhance your relationship. If one person's practicing and the other person's not, it's going to be a real challenge for you in your relationship, because you guys are going to be essentially playing music from 2 different sheets of music. And now the music doesn't sound so beautiful. But if you guys are all practicing the teachings, like say a whole household or a couple, this actually works really well. It doesn't mean that you can't be successful in a relationship if that's not the case. It's just that it's going to be much better for you if both people, like a life partner, a couple, are both practicing the teachings. Or if you have a family unit that you're living with, if everybody's practicing the teachings, you guys can support and encourage and help each other so that when you're practicing non-attachment, they understand what that means. Because if they don't understand the teachings, they might take you practicing non-attachment as they might think that you don't love them because they're associating attachment with love. So when they see you not being attached to them, they're going to think that you don't love them. So if everybody's practicing the teachings in your household, it actually works a lot better, but it doesn't have to be that way. You can still get to enlightenment, even though people in your household aren't practicing the teachings. It just makes it much better because you guys can support each other and encourage each other along the path, and then you'll understand each other. One of the things that happens when we have a relationship that's close with someone is we tend to sleep with them, and our minds get attached through sleeping with someone. If you sleep with your partner regularly, that's fine. That's something that we tend to do in relationships. But if you occasionally you can sleep alone, this is going to help your mind to let go of attachment. Because if you have not done this in your relationship, you can see that when you guys sleep together, you sleep really well. But then when somebody goes on a business trip or something like that, it's really hard for you to sleep because your mind is attached and you're used to having that person next to you in the bed. So sometimes when we sleep together, people think the relationship's going really well. And when we sleep apart, there must be something wrong, right? Somebody's in the doghouse, somebody's on the sofa. That means something's wrong in our relationship. But you can do this a different way. Even when things are going really well, you can choose to sleep separately sometimes. This is really helpful for your mind. So maybe you sleep together sometimes, and that's great, and you enjoy doing that. But even when things are going well, you sometimes sleep separate. And this trains your mind to be comfortable with this impermanence. That's what you're doing. You're exposing the mind to impermanence. Whereas if you always sleep with this person for, let's just say, 5 years, and the next thing you know, they go on a business trip, you're going to have a really hard time sleeping. Right? So if you integrate this into your life where you guys are regularly sleeping together, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 days, and then maybe 1 or 2 days you sleep separate. 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 days you sleep together, maybe 1, 2, 3 days you sleep separate. Right? If you do this for a few months, eventually your mind will let go and you won't have this craving to be sleeping with this person all the time. No attachment cultivates closeness. Sometimes people have this saying, they say a family that eats together stays together. I don't know if you ever heard this. The culture that I grew up in teaches this, that a family who eats together stays together. But this isn't actually true, because the idea of everybody getting to the point where they all are hungry at the same time, and every single day we're going to eat at 6 p.m., and every single day everybody has to be home in order to eat together at 6 p.m., this is not going to happen because of impermanence. So you'd like everybody to be able to make their own decisions about when they'd like to eat and when they're not going to eat. So it's not that a family that eats together stays together. It's a family that has no attachment to each other. That's what's going to keep the family together, because you don't have attachment to each other. You can feel freedom to be able to eat whenever you like and do whatever you like. So the way that we do it at our house is we have the table where people eat, but then we have like a sofa around the table. It's like an L-shaped sofa, so that if my son's sitting at the table eating, I can be relaxing on the sofa and still hanging out with him if I'd like to. Or if my wife is eating or I'm eating, someone can be hanging out in the same area. So we have like an open floor plan where the living room and the dining room and all of that is all together so that everybody can hang out with everybody. So if somebody's eating, there might be somebody over here hanging out in the living room, right? So you can set your house up this kind of way if you like. So me and my son, we eat together when we go out to restaurants and stuff like that. Or if we're going out together as a family, we'll eat together. But I say that's probably about maybe 20% of the time. More likely than not, he's going to eat by himself. I'm going to eat by myself. My wife's going to eat by herself. And this is okay. And we're still completely close and comfortable. So we eat together sometimes, but not all the time, right? So how you do it is up to you. It's your choice, but just don't feel like you have to force people to eat together. Because if you talk to families that do that, you'll find out that most of the arguments that they experience is at dinner time, because they're all feeling like they have to be forced to eat together, and people don't want to be there. And now they argue and they fight and they fester at the dinner table. That's because they don't want to be there, right? So if you just let people feel comfortable to eat whenever they eat, people will be much more pleased with that. If there's any discontentedness in the mind related to any particular relationships, that means you're attached, right? So if you get angry at your mom for certain things, your mind's attached. If you get frustrated when your dad does this thing or the other thing, your mind's attached. If you get annoyed when your brothers and sisters do this, you have attachment. So use this discontentedness as an indication for you that you have attachment in that relationship and that you're going to need to work on it to eliminate it. So your discontentedness is like the red light on the dashboard of your car, alerting you that you have attachment in this relationship. If you have a life partner or a boyfriend or girlfriend and you guys are choosing to have a sexual relationship, you're going to have attachment. That's part of the attachment, is the sexual relationship. Your mind is attached to this person, that you're wanting these pleasant things from them, and it's this physical contact that you have in order to get these pleasant feelings. So while you're working on eliminating attachment, just understand that as long as there's a sexual relationship, there's going to be attachment. And what you can do is you can get up to the second stage of enlightenment. Maybe you and your partner work up to that point, and now you maybe hang out there for a while. Maybe you're hanging out there. Your life's going to be quite peaceful in the second stage of enlightenment, but you're still going to have discontentedness, because there's going to be times where you want sex and you can't get it, and you're going to be frustrated or agitated or annoyed. So you can do all the other work on the path to enlightenment, like eliminating the ego and all these other things that you need to work on, while still in this second stage of enlightenment. And then at some point, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever you decide, you can then decide, okay, been there, done that. We've had enough sex. We're going to move on from this, because we can't imagine letting go of sexual activity, especially when we're young, because it's so enjoyable. But there's going to come a time where you're like, yeah, been there, done that. You know, we've done that enough times. Like, how many times do we need to do that? And you're going to be interested in moving past that. And if you and your partner are at that point, now you can move past it. And you're actually going to see that your relationship is even more enhanced, right? Because now you don't want anything from each other. You don't expect anything from each other. Like in the past, if I would get my wife flowers or chocolates or something like that, I suspect in the back of her mind, she was probably thinking, he wants something from me, right? But now when I give her a gift, she knows, because we don't have sex anymore. She knows he doesn't want anything from me. He's just doing this because he loves me, right? So you'll see that it actually enhances your relationship when you're not having sex. But when or if you ever choose to do that, it's a choice for you to make. Because one of the ways to extinguish a craving is to actually fulfill it. You're going to need to have enough physical interaction or intimate contact to the point where you've extinguished your craving for it, where that's one of the ways for you to extinguish a craving. You can cut it off and let it go, but you can also fulfill it. So if you and your partner have had lots of sex, eventually after multiple years, you're like, yeah, been there, done that. And if you've ever experienced that with a partner, maybe you've had one particular partner where maybe you guys were having sex for 2, 3, 4 times a day for like multiple days in a row. You probably got to the point where you're like, I don't want to have sex anymore. It's like, so much work, right? And you were probably like, I'm done with this for a while. But then like a week or two later, your craving came back up again, right? So you can see how your mind does have the ability to extinguish the craving, but it wasn't fully extinguished. It was only temporarily kind of muted in that situation because you were fulfilling your craving and you had your fill of it. It's kind of like when we were children. We really had a big craving for chocolate and ice cream. And we thought any day that we have chocolate and ice cream was the best day ever. And we just kept eating lots of chocolate and ice cream as a kid. But eventually we had so much chocolate and ice cream, we were like, if I have chocolate and ice cream, that's fine. If I don't, that's fine too. Right? And now you're at the point where you probably don't have a craving, desire, attachment for chocolate and ice cream. So you could eat it and be just fine, or not eat it and you'd be just fine. But with sex, it's not like that. If you're having sex, the goal of this is to get to those pleasant feelings. And as long as you're having sex, your mind's going to have some amount of discontentedness. Something like chocolate and ice cream, you can actually eat it and not be attached to it. But something like sex, you're going to have an attachment if you're having sex. So just know that if you're in a relationship and that's what you're choosing to do, you can still get to the second stage of enlightenment and your life will be quite peaceful and quite joyful there. But if you'd like to move beyond that, where your mind's completely peaceful and joyful permanently, that's where you're going to need to move beyond the sexual activity. So as long as there's sexual activity, there is going to be an attachment. But you might decide to just hang out there for a while. And that's what you're choosing to do based on your age, based on what you're doing with your family, and all these other kinds of things. So if there's discontentedness, it means there's an attachment. It's helpful to pay attention to quality of time versus the quantity of time. Sometimes we look at the quantity of something that we do. We think if we do a lot of it, then that means that it's good. But that's not necessarily the case. That you would like to look at the quality of time that you spend together, because you might only have a very limited time to spend with someone in your life, and that's okay. But spend quality time with this person. It's important to have patience in your relationships because attachments are very slow. These types of attachments are very slow to be eliminated out of the mind. If you have an attachment to chocolate, you can eliminate that over a number of weeks or even months. You can eliminate that. But an attachment to a person, it oftentimes takes multiple years to eliminate that attachment. So you're going to need to have patience to understand that they're gradually eliminated from the mind. And now the very last one that I'll teach you guys, this is like the ultimate way to eliminate attachment to the people who are closest to you. And this is what I suggest you do whenever you're ready. When you have your breathing mindfulness meditation practice built up and you've got the other factors of the Eightfold Path built up, you can do this one. The Buddha calls it contemplation of death, or some people might call it reflection of death. If you were in a relationship with a life partner, or if you had children or your parents or so forth, the biggest impermanence that you could experience is death. And that's why people have the strongest amount of discontentedness, the sorrow and the grief and the displeasure when someone actually dies. So experiencing death in a relationship is one of the hardest things for the mind to experience. So you can actually experience this prior to someone actually dying, because you know the people around you are going to die. And or you're going to die, right? It's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. It's kind of like death is waiting in the corner of the room, and it's going to come and visit you at some point. And it's either going to sneak up on you and catch you by surprise. And when that usually happens, it feels like someone pulled the carpet out from under your feet, or you've been chopped off at the knees. But what the Buddha teaches you to be able to do, to be able to confront this, is do what's called contemplation of death or reflection of death. What this is that you essentially go somewhere quiet and you close your eyes and you envision that the person that you're trying to eliminate this attachment to has died. You're not aspiring for them to die, but you're just envisioning in your mind as if they've died. Maybe a doctor has called you and informed you that they've died, or maybe a police officer or a family member or something like this. You play this out in your mind. Imagine that this has actually occurred. You're not aspiring for them to die. You're just imagining as if they have died. And now when you play that out in your mind, you go through all the things that you would normally do. You're not planning their death. You're just kind of envisioning as if this has happened. Maybe you're going to a viewing, a funeral. They're either getting buried or cremated. You're spending time with family and friends. There's all these other things. And now what happens past that, right? You go back to work or you spend time with family or friends or whatever it is. Because when you have someone that you're attached to, sometimes we say, I can't imagine how I would live life without them. But that's what contemplation of death is doing, is you're confronting how you would live life without them so that you can go through that process. Because again, death is going to come and visit you. It's only a matter of time. And you can let it come and sneak up on you and then feel miserable when it does. Or you can say, hey, death, I see you in the corner over there. I know you're going to come visit me, but instead, I'm going to come visit you. Right? I'm going to come visit you. And that's what you're doing here with contemplation of death. You're going to visit death. And now you do that for a certain session. It might take you 10, 15 minutes to play this out in your mind. And you might actually grieve and you might actually have sorrow when you're doing this. You would like to wait probably at least 2 weeks to a month to kind of regain your composure. Sometimes you can regain your composure in a matter of hours or days, but nonetheless, you would still like to wait for 2 weeks or a month and then do it again. And what you're going to see is your discontentedness is less than whatever it was the first time. It's going to be less. You're going to be less sorrow and less grieving. And you're going to see that you're going to regain your composure more quickly. And then you wait another 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and then you do it again and again. And you keep doing it until you can go through this process once or twice where you don't grieve at all. You're not sorrow. Your mind has accepted the fact that this person is going to die and your relationship is impermanent and that this person is not permanent in your life. I did this for my mom and my grandmother in my early 20s. And after I did this, I got to the end of it and I realized that if they had truly died, there were certain things that I never said to them that I would regret having not said. And there were certain things that I was interested in hearing from them that had they actually truly died, I would have never had the opportunity to hear that from them. So when I was done with this reflection of death, I picked up the phone and I called my grandmother and I said, "Hey, Grandma, I've always been meaning to tell you, blah, 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 blah." And we had that conversation. And then I said, "By the way, I've always been meaning to ask you, da, 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 da." Right? And I got that information, right? And I was done with that, right? Whereas if she would have truly died, I wouldn't have been able to do that. So then from that point forward, I felt like all the time that I ever got to spend with my mom and my grandmother was like bonus time because I had convinced my mind that they actually died. And now all the time that I got to spend with them, it was so fun. It was so enjoyable because I thought this person had died. I convinced the mind that they had died. So now whenever I would spend time with them, it was so wonderful because the mind wasn't attached anymore, right? So this is one of the ways that you can do this. You can do this for your life partner, your children, your parents, your siblings. Even if you have animals or pets that you're attached to, you can actually do this for them as well. You can even do this for your own death. If you fear death and you're not looking forward to death and your mind is like fearful of it, you can actually do this for your own death as well, where you contemplate your own death like you're a fly on the wall watching your own funeral. Again, you're not planning this. You're not aspiring to die. You're just getting comfortable with this whole idea of death because it's going to come visit every single one of us at some point for our own death, but also the death of the people around us. And this is the way to prepare your mind for it. Because if you've lived through it several times, now when it actually happens, your mind will be uncomfortable with it. So when I was 16 years old, my first girlfriend died. I was devastated. I was probably in a deep depression for about 2 or 3 years. And she was actually pregnant at the time. She had a baby. It was about 6 weeks along, and she died when I was 16 years old. Very devastating, right? Because I didn't have any wisdom or tools to be able to deal with this situation. Then when I was in my early 20s, my grandfather died, who was essentially like a father figure to me. And I was sad for about 3 months. It was a lot less because I had experienced this death. Then later in life, in my 30s, my stepfather died. I didn't have any discontentedness whatsoever because I wasn't attached to him. Then in 2017, my mom had died. But early in my early 20s, I had already let go of my attachment to her. So by the time she died in 2017, there was no grieving. There was no sorrow. There was no sadness. But of course, I loved my mom, right? This is where you can see that love doesn't produce discontentedness because you can experience someone's death and you're not upset. You're not sorrowful. And then just recently in the last several months, my grandmother has died. And my grandmother was like a mother figure to me, right? And she was probably the most significant person in my entire life. I didn't cry. I didn't grieve. I wasn't upset because my mind had already let go. I understood she wasn't permanent, right? So you can get to the point where you experience death, and instead of being sorrow and sad, you can actually have appreciation and gratitude, because that's what I had. When my grandmother died, it was nothing but appreciation and gratitude for having this amazing woman in my life, right? Instead of being sorrowful and sad. So this is the way to actually do that, is get to the point where you can do this early in your life, and now your mind can be trained to let go, so that when you actually experience that person's death, now your mind can be peaceful and joyful. But even if there's people, like say you have children, and more likely than not, you're going to die before your children, you can still do this to be able to train your mind to let go. So you don't just do this with people who are going to die before you. You actually do it with anybody that your mind is attached to. So if you use the discontentedness to be an indicator that you have attachment in this relationship, now you can do this reflection on death or contemplation on death with that person in mind. And that's going to train your mind to let go. So even your children, your nieces and nephews, anybody who you see your mind is attached to, you can do this contemplation of death, and it'll help you to let go. But you need to do all these other things that we talked about as well. So do you guys have any questions here? Anything you guys would like to ask? Question, Lucas?
Yeah.
Okay.
My question would be, when you mention about the with your partner, like the sexual craving, and you can actually extinguish it.
Mm-hmm.
Is it actually possible to extinguish? Because I feel it's a bit of an addiction. Like the more you do it, the more you wanna do it.
It depends if you're doing all the other work to extinguish a craving. If you're not doing your breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity, if you're not practicing all the other factors of the Eightfold Path, yeah, it'll grow, right? But for someone who's on the path and practicing all those factors of the Eightfold Path, then they can observe their mind, and they can train their mind in some cases to fulfill it. So say, for example, you have some fantasies that you would like to do with your partner, do them, right? Just if they're open to it, do it, right? Because now you'll extinguish that craving to actually do that thing. And that's how you extinguish a craving, by fulfilling it in some cases where you know it's not going to cause harm, right? That's why, like, if somebody was interested in snorting cocaine, I wouldn't say, oh, go ahead, snort cocaine, extinguish your craving. That's unwise because it's going to cause harm. Or if somebody was craving to steal a car, I wouldn't say, oh, go steal a car. That'll extinguish your craving, because that's going to cause harm and produce unwholesome results. But something like sex, if it's with one partner and you're dedicated and loyal and committed in that relationship, you can extinguish your craving for that by fulfilling it. And if you're doing all the other factors on the Eightfold Path, that's going to help you to knock it down. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. We have a question coming in on YouTube. Answer this question. This is from, looks like someone named Jampa. What do you do with relatives who put pressure on you to become something that you know that the Buddhist path is about, to become nothing? Okay, so if there's people around you that are trying to put expectations on you and convince you to do a particular thing, that's their craving, desire, attachment. That's their wants and expectations. They're trying to get their happiness through you, and they can only be happy if they get what they want, which is you doing this thing. That's the last thing you're interested in doing, because they can only be happy when you're doing that thing, and when you're not doing it, then they're not happy. So when someone's trying to put expectations on you, that's up to them. That's their choice. You can't stop them from doing that. All you need to be able to do is make sure your mind doesn't adopt that expectation as for yourself. So I'll give you an example of this. I think you guys have heard this one before, that when I was young, my family came to me and they said, hey, they saw me hanging out with my friends, my guy friends, and they said, hey, David, we want you to get a girlfriend. We think you should get a girlfriend. You're spending too much time with your guy friends. And I thought about it for a little bit, and I adopted that expectation, and I put it in my mind. I was like, all right, I'll go get a girlfriend. So I went and got a girlfriend, and now they were happy for a period of time. But then after that, they came to me a few months later and they said, hey, David, you're spending too much time with your girlfriend. You should be spending time with us. We want you to spend time with us. Well, I didn't adopt that expectation in my mind because I knew what was going on by that point. Because they had a certain expectation. I worked to get to that point. They were happy for a period of time, but then their expectation changed. And the last thing I was interested in doing is going to that expectation, because now they were going to have another one and another one and another one. So seeing what was going on early in life, I did adopt that expectation of having a girlfriend, and I went and got one, right? But then when they said this other expectation, I chose not to adopt that as my expectation of myself. So when people are trying to put expectations on you, the last thing you're interested in doing is adopting that to be an expectation of yourself. So if you have people around you that are putting expectations on you, just ignore it. Right? Just move on, because the last thing you're interested in doing is feeding someone else's expectation, because that's just a monster that's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. They're just going to keep putting expectations on you more and more. Okay, let me see if we have any other questions anywhere. All right, I don't see anything anywhere else. Okay. So it's 3:00. We're going to end our class here, but let me share with you guys what we're going to be doing tomorrow. In the morning, I'm going to share this topic with you, which is sharing the path to enlightenment, how to guide children along the path. If you have children, this will help you. But even if you're not interested in ever having children, this topic is still going to help you, because you might decide to share the path with your parents or your siblings or someone else in your life. So this is geared towards sharing it with children, but it's going to help you in other situations too. So I just kind of structured around children. Then in the afternoon, I'm going to teach you how to develop and maintain relationships, choosing wholesome friends and a life partner. I'm going to teach you how to choose to involve people in your life that are wholesome without judging them, without looking down on them. Because oftentimes the conceit is involved, where you're looking down on people when you're trying to determine whether or not to involve this person in your life or not. So there's a beneficial way for you to be able to make decisions through discernment or wise decision making of who to include in your life without judging them and looking down on them. So I'm going to teach you this. And of course, in the morning, we're going to do loving kindness meditation. And then in the afternoon, we're going to do breathing mindfulness meditation. So these are the two topics that we're going to be discussing tomorrow. Okay. So have a wonderful rest of your day, and perhaps we'll see you guys next time. Okay. Sawadee krap. You're welcome. Jai Jin.